All right, 7th grade, so we are working on our hybrid metamorphosis project. In class, we were throwing around just a couple ideas of things that we could do that would be really interesting for transforming objects into each other. One of the things I suggested is if you want to do a living being, so if you want to do a seahorse, have it transform into something that is not living. So the example I gave in class that I'm still excited about is a pineapple to a seahorse. So you were to divide your whole paper in half and then into 5 boxes, okay? In that first box, I'm going to draw mine on the whole paper just so you can see better. In that first box, you are going to start with a very light sketch of your very first object. Notice that this has taken me like 3 seconds to draw. Super easy. I'm not tracing anything. I'm not aiming for perfection. I'm just trying to get the basic shapes put in. Okay. So I've got my shape of my pineapple put down, but I know that it's got some spikes to it, so I'm kind of going to just add that texture. Now, as I'm doing this, I need to keep in mind, whatever line I put down on the paper has to be transformed in the next box as it starts to become more and more like my seahorse that is going to be down here. So I may want to cool it on all the textures for right now and just keep like maybe a couple here and there. But I don't want to give myself too much of a challenge where now I don't know what to do. Okay? Another texture you could do if you were to do a pineapple is like the SpongeBob one where you've got the crisscross. For this project though, please do not do anything that is two-dimensional. No anime, no emojis, nothing that is a flat shape. I want to see your understanding of value and being able to use it without having a reference photo like we had in our still lives where you could refer back to that photo you took to see if the values are right. Now is your chance to prove it. So I have one side drawn with my starting point. I'm going to scoot all the way to the other side and I'm going to draw my seahorse. So in class, you guys were given a lot of time to look up some ideas and to look up how to draw certain things. I forgot to do that before actually drawing it. So mine is going to be the idea of what a seahorse looks like. Seems about right. And I know that there's these types of shapes on their back. So I'm moving rather quickly and fluidly as I'm making these shapes. Notice how I'm not drawing with a hard line, okay? That's the last thing I'm gonna do once I have the form of this all right. So when I'm making the form, I'm just doing quick gestural lines to inform the shapes that I have here. And I want this to have an eye. Okay? So I've got my beginning point, and somehow this pineapple has to morph into something like this. That's going to be a disaster, but it's worth a try. So I've got this space in between. For you, it's going to be 3 squares that are the same width as your end and as your beginning. We want to make sure that all of our objects or all of our shapes start at the same point. So already I've broken that rule. One thing I could do, I'm going to erase this. And I'm going to simply just move the tail up a little bit, keeping those quick gestural marks just to get my information about the shapes. This is something, if you are seriously concerned about your boundaries, measure it out with a ruler. never hurts to be accurate. Okay, so in order to get from here to here, I need to make a jump. Now, this jump cannot be teeny tiny. It has to be pretty significant, so that way I can see that whatever I draw here is no longer a pineapple. Okay? If you choose to go more than 5 squares, it's completely acceptable and fine for you to do that. But if you do more than 5 squares, that's going to be little baby changes all the way to your end. Okay? So, back to doing 5 squares. I'm going to, let's see, the body of my seahorse kind of has that roundness that the pineapple does, so that's probably something I'm going to continue to have. But maybe I just move it up a little, and then I turn one of these spikes into maybe this thin part of the seahorse. So I'm going to take this spike and I'm just going to make it a little bit larger, and the one above it a little bit larger. Okay, so I've got this pineapple shape still. And then I'm going to make these spikes on my pineapple just become a little bit smaller and smaller. And then I've got this area of that like plant that sits on top of a pineapple. For some reason I can't think of that right now. But I'm going to have my pineapple slowly get a little bit taller. And then I'm just going to do the plant again. But I'm going to have this leaf make this curve here. So I'm slowly starting to form the head. I'm going to pull this one back a little bit to get that top roundness. And what I'm drawing now really shouldn't look just like this anymore. It should be like, wait, is this an onion with roots growing out of it? What the heck is going on here? Okay. Now, since I've got this tail to worry about, I might actually make my pineapple round at the bottom. So now it looks like it could be a human heart, and these might be the arteries. I don't know, just a thought. So now I need to somehow get this to look like the perfect mix of this and the perfect mix of this. So your third box has to be 50% seahorse, 50% pineapple. So how on earth am I going to do that? I'm no longer going to use my first square. Now I'm going to look at how can I make this turn into this. Sorry, I keep wiggling my paper. So I really think that this leaf I did here was really valuable to making this more like the seahorse. So I'm actually going to start incorporating this nose bottle shape. And then these leaves up here. Maybe I'll keep the texture, but I'll just make them not look as separate. For this assignment, it is so important that you're drawing extremely light, because if you don't, you will have to start this over so many times with just trying to get it all laid out. So we're seeing that my pineapple is slowly changing into some sort of weird penguin or bird shape. But if I were to disregard the pineapple, I could see that this is starting to turn into something like this. So then my fourth drawing here, I really want to keep the body shape, so that might be one of the first things I put in. It's just that underlying shape. And then I'm actually going to start to mold the tops of these leaves into the shape of the head. So in this fourth box, it shouldn't look just like this yet, because it still has to transform. And I gotta get that bottom part. And here I kind of gave it a nub of a tail. This time I'm actually going to give it a little bit more. So just a hook this time. And I'm gonna go in and make some of those defining shapes a little bit more correct. And I may want to do something like this. So originally I had forgotten the eye, so I just pulled down this line of the leaf and made that eye shape. Okay. So here is my morph. I went from a pineapple to some sort of human heart to some sort of penguin with a mohawk to maybe a naked seahorse or like a baby seahorse to a final seahorse. Once I have the outline of everything done, then I can go in and I can make some of these harder lines for the areas that I know are correct. And then I'm going to clean up any space around it that's not so correct yet. Okay? Once my line work is completely clean, my contour outlines have been put in, then I'm going to start thinking about value. So in the last project, we learned that the light source hits and one side is darker than the side that the light source is on. So if my light source is coming from here, then that means on all of them, it's coming from there. Okay? So you got to keep your value consistent in every single one. So I'm going to start by doing just my middle ground shade put in. I'm going to allow this to go all the way up to where my highlight may be. And I answered this in class too, but when you go to shade this, in our still lifes where the light hit, there was a shadow. But for this, don't worry about shadows, don't worry about backgrounds. We're honestly just learning about shape and form and turning one thing into something really fun, okay? Kind of letting our creativity a little bit more loose in this one. So then adding the next layer, I'm going to try to get each of these forms here. So I really want to keep that texture that a pineapple has. So I'm going to get this underlying form here. Okay. Once you have that stuff laid in, then you can darken certain areas that come off of your object. So for me, I've got some of those spikes. Now, I took it easy on the spikes in the center area because, as I mentioned, anything hanging off the edges like this has to be transformed. And I carried that all the way to the end. Okay? So it's just really important that you're being extremely mindful as you're planning this out. Don't get so detailed. Get the basic shapes down and then continue to move forward. Okay? In the end, this entire thing is going to be filled with value, each one having the same light source. This is going to be done with all pen or pencil. These are really fun to do, so if you want to go beyond 5 transformations, that's fine. Okay, so your minimum is 5, but then if you want to do 6 or 7, you'll just have to plan that out ahead of time and make sure your final or your end product is at the end of your strip. Okay? If you have any questions, please ask in class, comment on the assignment or on the video. I'm really excited to see what you can come up with.